How did a designer, because I am a designer, I will be for life, become a CEO? Um, I think the question should be, why aren't more designers this naturally? If you just saw those presentations, you can see the insights, their approach, the customer centricity, it equals building great businesses. So it should happen more often. Um, and then maybe how might you approach entering fintechs? It sounds like a lot of you are already in it. Maybe some of you are looking to get into fintechs or financial services anywhere. How might you approach it? I think that would be helpful as well. So I'll pass through the slides that aren't relevant for this. I will start with what is Mydoh. Mydoh is a money management app and smart card. That's a reloadable debit card. We've heard about reloadable debit cards here a minute ago. It is targeting essentially families, parents with kids to get real world experience, to build those good money habits early. Finlit is a gap across all generations. It's a problem and will be most pronounced amongst young generations, of which most of the wealth will go through. And so the next decade is crucial. If that segment isn't managing their money well, that's a problem for all of us. And so we believe Finlit is critical, and you learn by doing. And so we built an application to help you learn by doing. Yeah, good. There's a whole host of stuff that we have within the app. When you're a young person, you're doing chores and tasks and all that, you get payday. You have your own payday on Saturdays. You have your own card. There are controls in place for parents. There are limits on those cards. You can't go to, buy cannabis, for example. There's certain merchants that are blocked from these cards. They're young people. We want them to get practice, but we want to make sure they're protected. And a lot of those controls are in the parents' hands. Users today, it's a little bit deceiving. You can see that the majority of them are tweens. These are essentially middle schoolers. And so those are the bulk of the users on platform. And what we find is that our must-on time are weekdays at sort of lunch hour. That's when those middle schoolers are going out to whatever chicken place or fast serve place. Yeah. They're getting to do that, and they're getting real world experience with their friends and all that. And so it starts there. If we were looking at number of transactions, size of cart, which is the dollar amount of a transaction, it is far greater with the teens. They're just shopping more frequently. They have more money to spend, either because they're earning it themselves or parents giving them more, and they're buying more expensive things as well. But this is our user group now. And in parents, we're essentially talking to millennials and Gen Xers. Those are the folks that are using this. And I will say a lot of the services we provide are around Finlit. Some of them are educational based, tools and resources. We get as much feedback from these older millennials and Gen Xers that information is valuable for them. And I think that's been sort of the hidden secret of Mydoh, is that this is benefiting the entirety of the family, not just these young folks. A little bit on how we're organized. If you think about Mydoh as a business unit, as a vertical, there are a number of horizontal teams that cut through it. I happen to lead both of these two groups. So business unit and a horizontal, a little different, it's not quite often. But in the sense of this horizontal group, it's our design team, we have three core functions of it. What we call CX strategy. Those are people with backgrounds in anthropology and behavioral sciences and psychology. They're helping us make sure that we're building things based upon what we know of consumers and what those needs are and what might be the signals of a behavior change and how might you influence behaviors. That work is coming from that CX team. I think design, especially product design, UX design, is only effective if you have that deep understanding. And so building this team, I started with that group first before anybody else. They generally sit in what we describe as like a shared service group outside of a specific business, but they come in. And we have a couple of folks who are lean further into one venture or another because they have that learned knowledge. They've done the work with them. They've built the relationships. So you just don't want to plug and play anybody at any time. So there's a couple, but they sort of sit on the periphery. Product design or design, UI design, whatever you call it, digital product design, that is within this group, but it sits directly in Mydoh. Every day they come in saying, I work for Mydoh, I think about Mydoh. That's the same with our engineers, our marketers, our product folks. They are every day trying to build a great business to compete with the likes of EQs and the many others that are out there. And the last team that's part of this design group is creative and content. Think of those as the folks who help build the brand, the marketing campaigns, the visual designers, writers, creative folks, art directors that come in, and sometimes they're allocated. Performance marketing, that's always on. We're doing it all the time. We're not going to shift that person in and out. But there's sort of surge capacity. We're going to do a big Super Bowl campaign. We're going to do something grandiose where you want to bring in more folks, a producer, an editor, an illustrator, other resources to help. Okay. I thought the question of why is Mydoh is really important, because that speaks to why does RBCx and this unique division that I'm in exist, period. And I'll talk about it across a couple of dimensions. Number one is this idea of forces of change. We're seeing mass changes everywhere. Canadian consumers are flexible these days. They're fluid, sometimes fickle. They will move quickly. And we're seeing that what historically was loyalty. I'm banking where my parent banked. I'm going to get all of my accounts in a single place. That is just not the case any longer. And so primacy is declining. You no longer have a bank that is they consider you a prime relationship. They have a relationship, but just a small part of your full wallet. We're seeing rate sensitivity and other issues. 5% interest are pulling people in because they're seeking a way to earn more. And so we're seeing that change. Competition, they're everywhere. You're working for them right now, or you're applying to them. And they're continuing to grow, and they come in all kinds of different flavors. There's a whole host of platform providers as well that are, in essence, what we describe as banking as a service, the foundational capabilities that allow a startup to come in and have all the capabilities that they need. And they're just not staying with traditional core banking capabilities. They're expanding to other services, bring partners on board to offer a loyalty program or rewards and offers, things like that. The other thing that has been the advantage of a big bank like Scotia or RBC has been this reputation. We're secure. Our logo is literally a shield. We're going to protect you every single day. That reputation is no longer unique to us. And in fact, the research we've done is showing that these fintechs, these startups are on par, if not viewed as safer. And sometimes that's driven by the headlines that we've caused ourselves around data breaches and issues that we've done to not protect our clients. But that playing field is even. We do not have that advantage regardless of the shape of our logo. And declining barriers. It is everyone's digital. These capabilities are simple. Your money is digital. You're no longer having to get in a car, go to a branch, do something physical. It's within reach, literally within reach. And so it's much easier to change. So forces of change broadly are causing us to rethink what we do as an organization. Okay, so that then meant RBC created this entity called RBCx, which has spawned a bunch of things like Mydoh. It's like a nesting doll type of thing. This screen just turned off. Okay, so why would a bank do this new business called RBCx? There's a couple of reasons. To address those forces of change, we're trying to move as an organization early in the journey. Just give you an example. If you're buying a house, you need a mortgage. You think about your bank when you're signing paperwork or right before you're making a bid to find out how much you can afford on a house. You had been dreaming about that house 10 years ago. And so when we talk about early in the journey, it's that. Can I get to that dream stage when you're far before banking ever shows up in your mind? So early in the journey is something we think about. How does Mydoh do it? Well, we're reaching kids to try to build this strong foundation of financial literacy. Right? We're reaching families and friends early, and we think we're doing it for a really meaningful purpose. Always on solutions. So banking is what we describe as sort of sort of singular. It's a transaction. If I have to pay a bill, I will pay that bill. You likely hit it on auto pay. And so I don't even have to go to the app but once to set up that auto payment. So you set me on repeat. And I don't have a deep engagement. There's no loyalty. There's no relationship there. I have the account. I did that transaction, but it is just that, transactional, not deeper. So always on was the premise of, can we create real engagement, something that is meaningful and valuable, and therefore hopefully something that equals more loyalty and a relationship over time. And with Mydoh, our number one stated priority is around engagement. It's not just around growing. We think we have to create this deep engagement. Our North Star metric, the number of interactions per week per user. An interaction is a number of things. An insight that I've received or a payment that I've made with my card. I'm interacting, I'm engaging, that's our North Star. And there's a whole host of capabilities beyond banking that we built to try to create that type of engagement. And then open to everyone. Again, a bank like RBC has the history of like an upmarket player. You got to have a high credit score before you get this account. There's a barrier to entry. We're wanting to be open to everyone. That was one of the reasons why Mydoh isn't just for RBC clients, it's for anybody. It's also a reason why we went subscription free just a few months ago, which was a big decision to remove a critical revenue source. And we have all kinds of resources outside of our app. You don't have to sign into our app in order to get value. So again, we want to be accessible to more people. And then the last piece of why Mydoh, you cannot have a business that does not have sort of a real purpose behind it. You will not get employees or anyone committed to your mission unless you actually have a mission and focus on this. So this premise of helping the next generation thrive, every single member of the Mydoh team thinks about that every single day. So it's critical. We want to make banking more accessible. We think it's a bit complicated. You want to demystify it. We want it to be available to everyone. And we don't want to presuppose some financial objective that I have or that someone else has, but that whatever your objectives are, we're going to help you get there. There's real purpose behind that. We get real people behind that mission. Okay. All right. So about a year and a half ago or so, I took over as CEO. When these things happen, they're not planned out, and I didn't plan it out. My boss didn't plan it out. Circumstances change and things happen. I didn't want to write some of this on a slide, but it was a couple of hours from the "do you want to do this" to when we were announcing it to the entire organization. Things happen like that. But what did I do when I moved in that position? I'll share a few things. If I think about, how might you think about the entirety of the organization? The number one thing is what are we providing? We built all kind of capabilities to make this product more meaningful for folks. One of the issues that we saw in Mydoh was that when that teenager aged up, got their first job, well, they no longer just relied on their parents' money for allowance or chores. They got their own job. And so they were leaving us in droves. And so we had an issue of retention. And so we needed to build some capabilities to essentially age up the product. Marketing and distribution. One of the things, if you work in any organization, you're always pressed for cash. The first thing that goes is marketing dollars because it's discretionary. It's better than removing people. So you start there. And so we needed to think about how might we distribute differently. For instance, instead of that Super Bowl commercial that I would love to do, we're now we have a distribution strategy. And as an example, Scholastic book fairs. We probably all remember those book fairs. They had a need. They're dealing with cash all day. That is hard to reconcile and manage. They like a sort of digital card option. We raised our hand saying we could be that for you. It was a match made in heaven. We get into 10,000 schools. We're actually providing books and other services for some of those schools as part of our charitable effort as well. But it was a great way in which we can reach these families, reach these young people, minus the ad spend. Operations. What I did not realize was that most of my time was not spent on building great products. It was addressing cultural and people issues that precluded them from building great products. There were a litany of things that we had to do in order to address that. It was just, morale was low. It was unhealthy, finger pointing, just a bit of toxicity that you just don't want in an organization. And so I had to look at that. And part of that was bringing in new leaders at the top of the house. Part of it was reorganizing the team, addressing some of the more toxic parts of it, and dealing with it head on. But a lot of the business and operations piece was addressing that part of the organization. I'll keep going. This is where I'm going to pivot. I initially wanted to talk about this case study around pricing. How do we go free and all that? But it's a win situation. I feel good about it. Like, okay, great. We went free. Yeah, of course that's going to work. I will say the one thing was we did not do this lightly, and some people were asking about why not 6% or 6.5%. There's a number of things. This went off again. There's a number of things you can do to essentially make those decisions with data on your side. In the case of pricing, we were absolutely critical to understand this from the customer lens. What was precluding them from onboarding? What did they tell us verbatim? We were looking at competitors. What are they doing? What we found was that they had much more rich services with many more benefits, giving you a lot more value that merited the fee, where we didn't merit it. The value wasn't as much as theirs. So why were we asking for the same? We did the unit economic work. We essentially said, what is all the revenue and how much expense to support one customer? And you essentially, take a conservative view of that. You take an aggressive view of that. And you look to say, well, what are the elements to take me from one customer to 100 to 100,000 to see what would be the impact of this pricing change? What we saw was that there was too much upside, that unlocking access to more Canadians had much more value, even if we were losing the $299 up front. And then it was like a bunch of successes. Okay, how did I get here? I got a few slides on that. Okay, there were some giants in my life. These are folks that I consider sponsors. Everyone needs sponsors. And what a sponsor is someone that knows you and will do the work on your behalf to get you that phone call, to get you that interview, to give you that opportunity, even though your resume says you're not ready for it. They have belief in you beyond what is probably worth it. I don't think I gave you that much value for you to talk about me so great. They do that, and they do it consistently over time. There are people here that I've worked with for over 25 years. If I had an issue tomorrow, they would be here on a plane if I needed them. You need sponsorship. You need people. And the ask of you is, when you have that, use it. I lean on my sponsors. I will call them for advice. I will ask for an intro to that person for that company that I want to talk to. Use them. They like it. They get to, use the thing that person, asked of them or whatever. The other thing I would say is pay it forward. When you're in this position, when you see someone that gives of you and you're in that position for someone else, do it. Lean in and help that person be their sponsor. I got 5 kings. One name is literally King. Name is King. That's pretty amazing. Okay, I say yes a lot. And that equaled taking leaps of faith that were super scary, that I was not ready for, and yet it added arrows to my quiver over time. If I could just walk you through a little bit. I started out as a designer, visual designer, going to school in the US. I went the traditional route to an advertising agency. When I was going, I started at sort of the birth of what we now use as the World Wide Web. And all these advertising agencies were hiring web designers because they needed them to create essentially these very lightweight brochure websites. So I was one of those early on. I had the opportunity to go into consulting. And when you're in consulting or banking, this happens a lot. The company you join gets acquired by another one, they get acquired by another one. So the company I worked for no longer exists because it was acquired a bunch of times ago. But I led a creative practice there, and I got a first foray into waterfall product delivery. Consulting companies build big applications and they have to do it through a rigorous process to make sure that application works. And I absorbed all that in. Waterfall is no longer in vogue, it's now agile, but the discipline and to build something resilient and scalable and large is what I learned there. One of my clients hired me over. That's also one of my sponsors ended up hiring me over. He said, I'll pay you twice as much, and I'm still paying less than what I'm paying consulting fees for. He didn't pay me twice as much, but I call this the do everything job. It was an amazing opportunity to it was such a small team with accountability for everything. So whether it was marketing or project management, product management, design, what I know, it was an opportunity to do everything. We owned the entirety of this bank called Charter One in Cleveland, Ohio, and we were able to do a lot. I absorbed all that experience. I was able to take that over to Capital One, much more larger organization. And at that time is when agile delivery started to overtake waterfall. I absorbed that. Just web design moved into UX and UI and human-centered design and the practices that they applied at Capital One. I learned that there. Performance marketing, that was something that wasn't the case when we're talking about digital marketing sets. I absorbed all those new arrows, added to my quill, applied them at Genworth, and at RBC, some 5 states and 2 countries later, had the opportunity to run 2 businesses simultaneously, the Center of Excellence and a line of business as CEO of Mydoh. Okay, I use a superpower of mine, and that's design often. And as you work in the corporate world, you're storytelling. You're trying to convince someone to try something new, be bold and ambitious, go a different way. In this case, this was a project we do at RBCx every year where we try to create a killer, for lack of a better word. In this case, it was me working for about 2 weeks to create the Mydoh killer. We do that for every venture we have. If I could dream up the thing that would eat your lunch, let me build it and show you what that thing does. I did it. These are just a handful of slides of this concept. This doesn't exist. This banking revolution, right? It was this whole new way. This is like recycled plastics from oceans and blah, blah, blah. We dreamt this as Mydoh killer. It's cooler, covers all ages, it's bolder, but I'm telling a story. And I'm telling it about this business problem that we have to reach young people, and I'm doing it with the thing I know best, visuals, pictures. Pictures are worth 1,000 words. I become the storyteller. I can't tell you how much this type of work has led me into all kind of rooms. Boardrooms with our CEO rooms. It's the superpower that I knew. I knew how to storytell. I knew how to do it through pictures. What is your superpower? How do you leverage that to your advantage to continue our career progression? So a few other things before I go that I thought I'd share. How do you get there? Those are some of the things that were important for me. Number one, we talked about fintechs. Well, there's all kinds of different flavors. There's startups, there's established organizations, there's B2C, B2B, there's platform services, like I mentioned, banking as a service and so forth. Where do you want to go? That will dictate the behaviors you need to be successful in that environment. How our approach to startup, where there's 5 of us, is very different than when we're entering an organization with 90,000 people. So have a little bit of sense of where you want to go, what interests you. Make certain you have confidence in the leader you're working for. You don't have to agree with everything, but you have to have true conviction that I'm going to follow this person. We're going to build something great because I believe in you. We all have those leaders in our lives or people that we don't feel that way. Yet I'm working for that person. This went off again. So please make sure you have that conviction for the people you're working for. Understand the dynamics at play in your organization. Ask if you don't know. Speak to the audience. Carve your approach to the audience you're speaking to. So for instance, the pretty picture, that does not work for the CFO. He doesn't care. And as much as I want, and I don't want to pick on CFOs, But there's someone that's at the polar opposite from how I view the world as a designer, and they will never see it in my way. How do I recognize that their purview is different, and how do I use the tools to communicate them in their language? It's critical in any organization, large or small, that you learn how to speak to the person in their language. Focus on the tailwinds, not the headwinds. When you're in fintechs, in a country like Canada that's fully regulated, it is easy to get wrapped around the axle in the headwinds. We can't do this, we can't do that. And that won't help you. It's just a reality, like know it and move on. There's plenty of tailwinds. And when I think about RBC, an organization, how can I use that as my strategic advantage? Another startup doesn't have access to 90,000 people, experts from across the country. How do I use that as a tailwind versus focus on just the headwinds? I showed my superpower. It just says flavor of it. What is your superpower, and exploit it to your benefit. Be tenacious. I can't tell you how many times I've been interviewing folks, and I'm pretty sure they want a job. I've interviewed other folks, and I've been absolutely certain they want this job. This is the job they want, and they tell you that. Because what they know, because they watched that video of that keynote I gave, or because they read the headlines, or because they did a little pilot on their own, or because they're using it every day because they just wanted to, or they built a prototype version of it, it shows up when they want this job. And that takes tenacity, that takes real focus on what do you want to do, but do it, it stands out, and I hire those people. Yeah, okay, I'll keep going. Oops, I skipped over one area. I think it's just not updated. This needs to be refreshed. I guess I'll leave you with this. Leading two organizations over the last year and a half was taxing, as you can imagine. There's about 100 plus people that I was trying to manage in two different organizations. The thing that I didn't realize as much was how much the EQ was critical as opposed to just the IQ. There was nothing more that I can do than just help people feel more empowered and available, and that was crucial. The other thing that was important that I just did, and we just launched it, was succession planning. So this was always a deviation for me. And so just this last week, I was able to make that change over. We had the person that for the last year has been working as my successor and has been able to take it over. Yeah, it's been an ordeal. It's been fun. It's possible for any designer to do. And it's, from my perspective, it's you leaning into the skills that you know and you do. It's building additional skills by taking leaps of faith and opportunities, having sponsors that believe in you to do it, and you can be successful. And with that, thank you.